The transmission was broadcast across every known system, a declaration of war so absolute it shook the entire galactic community. The Corran Dominion, an empire spanning thousands of star systems, had announced its intention to exterminate humanity. Their fleets had crushed civilizations for millennia. Their word was law. Their threats were never empty. Admiral Rannick of the Dominion delivered the message himself, his voice cold and filled with contempt. Humans, he declared, were an infestation, an evolutionary mistake that would be erased from existence. The Dominion would wipe them out so completely that history itself would forget they had ever lived. The message reached Earth, distant colonies, mining outposts, and deep space patrol fleets. Billions heard it. Billions stood in silence. For most species, such a threat meant surrender. The Corrans expected fear. They expected desperate negotiations. Instead, they received a response. A single video transmission appeared on Dominion command screens. A human soldier stood before the ruined skyline of New Moscow on the colony world Grom 4. Smoke rose behind him. Alien war machines burned in the distance. His armor was scorched, streaked with both human and Corran blood. His expression was calm. Amused. "Congratulations," the soldier said evenly. "You just declared war on the galaxy's deadliest species." Then the transmission ended. The first true battle had already begun. Corran forces had invaded Grom 4 expecting swift conquest. Instead they found chaos. Human resistance fighters used guerrilla tactics, improvised explosives, and relentless ambushes. Every street cost the Dominion blood. Major Elias Carter directed defenses from shattered barricades while Lieutenant Vasquez held the western flank under constant assault. Ammunition was scarce. Reinforcements were days away. But surrender was never discussed. The Corrans advanced with plasma artillery, leveling buildings. Humans vanished into shadows, reappeared behind enemy lines, and struck without warning. What was meant to be an extermination became a slaughterhouse. Then came the impossible report. A small human strike team had infiltrated a Dominion battleship. They killed its crew. They stole it. For the first time in their recorded history, the Corran High Council felt something unfamiliar. Fear. The war had begun, but it was already clear this would not follow the Dominion's rules. Humanity did not break. Humanity adapted. And the galaxy was about to learn a terrifying lesson about underestimating a species that evolved through conflict and refused to kneel before extinction itself. The stolen battleship was called the Varrock, a Dominion siege vessel built to annihilate planets. Now it belonged to humanity. Inside its bridge, Captain Daniel Rower stood over alien command consoles still slick with Corran blood. Engineers and hackers worked frantically, tearing into unfamiliar systems, forcing alien code to obey human logic. It should have been impossible. It wasn't. Admiral Kassari appeared on the main display from Earth's Defense Command. Her expression remained controlled, but the shock was visible in her eyes. Rower confirmed it plainly. They hadn't just captured the ship. They intended to use it. As a Dominion fleet approached Grom 4 to reinforce ground forces, the Varrock opened fire. The first Corran cruiser never raised shields. It did not expect betrayal from one of its own. Plasma cannons ripped it apart in seconds. Confusion spread across enemy communications as Lieutenant Harper exploited stolen security codes, masking the Varrock's identity long enough to cause fatal hesitation. That hesitation sealed their fate. Human fleets dropped from hyperspace, ambushing the Dominion for the first time in history. On the surface, Major Carter watched fire rain from orbit. At first he feared more reinforcements had arrived. Then Rower's voice crackled through the comm channel. "We're giving them a taste of their own medicine." The Corran fleet broke. Survivors retreated in disarray. What remained of their ground forces scrambled to evacuate, but Carter's resistance fighters refused to let them escape. The occupation ended in smoke and vengeance. Across the galaxy, oppressed species observed in disbelief. The unthinkable had happened. The Dominion had lost. Humanity escalated further. Rather than keep the Varrock as a trophy, Rower and his crew transformed it into a weapon of strategic devastation. They targeted Velrath, a heavily fortified supply world fueling the Dominion war machine. Under false identification codes, the stolen battleship entered the system undetected. When the Corrans realized the truth, it was too late. Harper had rigged the vessel's plasma core into a controlled chain reaction. Rower's final transmission was simple. "Congratulations. You just lost another planet." The Varrock detonated over Velrath's primary supply hubs. The explosion crippled Dominion logistics across entire sectors. Fuel depots vanished. Trade routes collapsed. Military expansion halted overnight. The Korans had perfected conquest over centuries, but they had never faced an enemy that attacked supply chains instead of territory, morale instead of borders. Humanity did not fight to occupy. Humanity fought to dismantle. And something far more dangerous than fleets or weapons was spreading through the galaxy. Oh. Velratha's destruction ignited consequences the Dominion could not control. Across enslaved systems, rebellion erupted. Species that had endured centuries of subjugation saw proof that the Empire could bleed. Supply convoys were sabotaged. Patrols were ambushed. Military governors disappeared. Fear, once the Dominion's greatest weapon, began turning against them. Within the High Council chamber, panic replaced arrogance. Admiral Rannick demanded total eradication of humanity, but even he could not deny reality. Humans sacrificed ships to destroy fleets. They attacked infrastructure instead of territory. They adapted faster than Dominion strategists could respond. The old rules of conquest no longer applied. Back on Earth, Admiral Kasari studied a holographic map of the fractured empire. Dominion forces still outnumbered humanity 100 to 1. But the war was no longer about numbers. It was about perception. It was about psychological collapse. We don't need to defeat them outright, Kasari told her officers. We need to break them. Operation Executioner was born. Instead of grinding through outer defenses, humanity targeted the Koran homeworld itself. Stealth ships slipped past perimeter patrols designed to repel massive invasions, not surgical strikes. Captain Rower led the infiltration team personally. Their objective was simple: cause irreversible chaos. Human operatives planted synchronized detonations across orbital defense grids. When the charges ignited, half the planet's protective network went dark in seconds. Dominion commanders scrambled to respond, expecting an armada. Instead, human warships delivered precision bombardments against military infrastructure and command hubs. Railgun strikes shattered shipyards. Supply depots vanished in pillars of flame. The Koran command structure fractured. Orders overlapped. Communications jammed. Warships were destroyed before clearing atmosphere. Humanity was not conquering the home world. It was dismantling it. Inside the Imperial Palace, the Koran Emperor watched disaster unfold. For centuries, no enemy had threatened his throne. He dismissed humans as primitives. He was wrong. The palace doors exploded inward. Rower and his soldiers stormed through smoke and debris, weapons raised. The Emperor, once untouchable, now stood cornered. Rower met his gaze without hesitation. "You declared war on humanity," he said calmly. He fired once. The Emperor fell. Across Dominion space, shockwaves spread faster than light. Leadership collapsed. Control fractured. The Empire's spine had been severed. And the species once dismissed as weak had become something else entirely. Not prey. Hunters. The death of the Koran Emperor shattered the illusion of invincibility that had sustained the Dominion for centuries. Without centralized authority, regional commanders turned on one another, desperate to secure fragments of power. Enslaved armies revolted openly. Planets that had bowed in silence rose in coordinated uprisings. The empire that once erased civilizations now faced extinction from within. Human forces did not slow their advance. Admiral Kasari understood momentum was everything. Strategic strikes targeted remaining fleet shipyards, communication nexuses, and resource hubs. Humanity avoided prolonged occupations, focusing instead on eliminating the Dominion's ability to regroup. Each calculated assault accelerated systemic collapse. Major Carter led liberation operations across former colony worlds, coordinating with rebel factions who provided intelligence on Dominion strongholds. Lieutenant Vasquez oversaw sabotage networks deep behind enemy lines. Captain Rower, recovering from Operation Executioner, returned to active command within weeks. There would be no pause. No negotiated peace. The war had shifted from survival to finality. Across neutral systems, observers recognized the irreversible shift in galactic power. The species once labeled insignificant had dismantled the most feared empire in recorded history in mere months. Trade alliances realigned. Diplomatic envoys rushed toward Earth seeking protection or partnership. Some civilizations celebrated their freedom. Others watched humanity with cautious dread. On a ruined Dominion capital world, Kasari addressed assembled soldiers beneath a sky still scarred by orbital bombardment. Their armor bore the marks of relentless campaigns. Their numbers were smaller than when the war began. Victory had required sacrifice. They believed they were apex predators, Kasari said, her voice carrying across the shattered plaza. They were wrong. Behind her, Dominion banners burned. The remaining Corran fleets scattered into deep space, fragmented and leaderless. Pursuit operations ensured they would never reassemble into a unified threat again. Within a year, organized Dominion resistance ceased entirely. What endured were isolated remnants, hunted systematically until surrender or annihilation ended their resistance. History recorded the conflict as brief yet transformative. The lesson spread farther than any fleet ever could. Underestimating humanity carried consequences beyond defeat. When threatened with extinction, humans did not collapse. They adapted. They retaliated. They evolved. The galaxy entered a new era under a different balance of power. Humanity did not declare itself conqueror. It did not enslave. But it made one truth unmistakably clear. You do not declare war on humanity. Because if you do, you will not get a prolonged conflict. You will get extinction.